America dream.
Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight.
43 dead and a city in flames.
I'm declaring a public state of emergency.
Understand, no black college had won a Division I NCAA championship.
That's the end of the game. Howard University has won. Howard is the NCAA champion.
The National Collegiate Athletic Association announced in Chicago that the Howard University Bisons have been stripped of its 1971 title.
This here was bias, it was prejudice, we were discriminated against.
Politics don't affect St. Louis University. I'm sorry that politics do affect other teams.
I wasn't even thinking of discrimination. I was thinking about, we'll get it back.
It's not about soccer anymore.
Every time we took the field, we had to represent people in a country that needed a voice.
We grew because of the struggle.
Truth crushed to earth will rise again.
Truth crushed to earth shall rise again.
Good evening, viewers, and welcome to another edition of Scoreboard here on Axe Television Network. We are on the air every Tuesday evening between the hours of 8 to 9, where we bring you something that is relevant in the sporting industry in Trinidad and Tobago. And on tonight's program, we have a panel of very distinguished gentlemen. When I say distinguished, because they all came from Howard University, and they were all part of that triumphant team in 1971 and 74. When that university became the first black university to win the NCAA Division I championship. Gentlemen, welcome to Axe Television Network, and it's a pleasure. Mr. Keith Lucloy,
my pleasure.
Mr. Alvin Henderson, and the ever-great Lincoln Tiger Phillip. We're here to talk about that era, the era where was the 1960s. They had that era where they had the civil riots. Yeah. And this university made history, although one of your championships was taken away from you all after you all had beaten St. Louis University, I think it was 3-1 or something like that. You were the coach on both occasions. Alvin, you were there in 71. Keith, you were there in 1974. Before I start with you, the coach, let me talk to you, Keith. What was your experience like being from Trinidad, attending Howard University, and being on a team that accomplished something for the first time?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I basically ended up at Howard by accident, if I could put it that way. Howard University came to Trinidad to play a round of games in 1972. I was the captain of the national under-19 team, as it was then called. We played right here in San Fernando at Skinner Park. And afterwards, I had known Alvin. We had played together in Intercol in St. Mary's in the late 60s. And he introduced me to Lincoln, who is an icon, remains an icon of Trinidad and Tobago football, but I didn't know him. When he was playing here, I was a boy. We introduced ourselves to each other, and I left it at that. Then, lo and behold, several months later, it was in August of 1972, I'm at home and I just get a call from Lincoln telling me I have to be in Washington. This was a Sunday morning, I have to be there by Tuesday. I had no visa, nothing at all. But, you know, I was successful in getting that, and I went and I landed there. Howard, of course, is a historically black university, as they call it, and a special black university. In our view, I'm quite sure it remains the premier black university in the United States. And we went there in a particular time, right? We're coming out of the era of the 1960s, black power, black consciousness, all of that is still in the air. The war against Vietnam is winding down, and Howard, in a sense, was a center of protest, and of alternative thought, if I could call it that. So every time we went out to represent Howard, we didn't just go out there to play a football match. And let me also hasten to add and interject here that like Alvin, I'm sure would agree, I went from boy to man during my time in the United States. And part of that transition from boyhood to manhood was the Howard experience, because it taught me a lot about being a man and about being a black man in today's world. So, you know, we went out there to represent the school, for sure, but also to represent the black community in the United States, not just Washington, D.C., and within that, the immigrant or the foreign black community within that. So football now in the United States doesn't, or then didn't have as much attention as it has now, but the importance and significance of what we did then wouldn't have the same significance today, because there was no other school that offered me a scholarship. It just wasn't done to get a black boy from the Caribbean to get a scholarship to the United States. Alvin went before me, and then I followed him. And so it was a really watershed period in my life.
Okay. Alvin, you want to share your
Well, I came, I think 2 years earlier than Keith. I actually went up right after my A-level high school days at St. Mary's College, where I was captain of a very good team. Ian Bain, the former captain, had left, but we had several outstanding players, and several of them eventually came to Howard. Keith was one of those. But I was earmarked to go to university, as my family and cousins had done in the UK. And Lincoln had come to coach St. Mary's. Father Defoe, our games master, often would bring somebody of prominence to come and coach us off-season, sometimes for a stint of 4 to 6 weeks. And Lincoln came on one of those stints. And Lincoln came, and after the stint, or during the stint, he asked me, how would you like to go to school in the US and play football at the same time? Well, I couldn't ask for anything better.
Because if you're paying for
and he then mentioned that scholarships were being offered and whatnot, and his attachment not only to the professional team in the States, but he was now becoming attached to Howard University for the first time. So I jumped at the chance, because going to school in England, it would have been all just academic studies, and I jumped at the chance to go to Howard University and got the shock of my life, both culture shock when I finally arrived in America for the first time, because of what Keith had talked about. There was a lot of upheaval at the time. In fact, I arrived soon after. There were a series of riots in Washington, D.C. itself, right around the campus of Howard University. And so we were all caught up in that black experience. Keith, one of the other things that we happened at the time was apartheid in South Africa had reared its head in a big way, and Howard University was one of the focal points of upheaval against that system.
Lincoln, you would have gone up before, and you would have experienced the life and the situation before these guys. Now, take me through the first era when you invited them to come up, because these are young guys living in the Caribbean, not knowing what to expect when they go up there. They would have, of course, been looking at you for guidance, right? But when you went up there, what was the situation like when you went up there? Because we know of the riots and, you know, the black and the white and, you know, all this thing. But when you went up there, what was the experience for you like?
Well, first of all, I got a contract when I was playing here for the regiment, and I did well in the regiment versus Malvern game, and I got a contract with the Baltimore Bays. I went up in 1968, And it was fantastic. I didn't have any black experience or didn't have any experience because mostly white folks surrounded the soccer at that time. But then I remember vividly I was at a movie theater, and on the screen it came up, please vacate, the premises because Martin Luther King has just been shot. And by the time we got home, places were burning all over the country. And it was an eerie kind of atmosphere. And it was then that I started to understand the discriminations and the problems, that black people were facing in the United States. And it was as though God was guiding me. I was doing a clinic. I was coaching on the professional level, the Washington Darts. We had a lot of top players from Trinidad, Victor Gamaldo, Jerry Brown, and Leroy Dillon, Archibald. And we were doing a clinic. I always do clinics with my professional players. And the coach, an American guy named Ted Chambers, he didn't know much about soccer, but he looked out. He was like an angel for the soccer, West Indian students. And he asked me, he invited me to do a clinic there, and there I met, I did a clinic with Howard University. There I met Winston Yalariatha, and he advised me to apply for the coaching position. And now to coach, you had to have had a bachelor's degree. I was still working on mine, struggling with a bachelor's degree, but because I was working on it and I had all the professional credentials, they allowed me to stay with the team. And then I came down to Trinidad with Father Difu and St. Mary's, and spoke with Alvin, and Alvin is the one that's really, of all the players, really started our program moving in the right direction.
Okay. Now, the first year of success was in 1971.
That was 1970.
1970.
71 we won.
71, yeah. In 70.
Yeah.
How did it start, and who are some of the players, from the Caribbean who were on that team?
Well, when I got there, we had Winston Yalariatha, we had Kenny Thomas, the late Kenny Thomas. He was at the fullback, and Desmond Alfred, he was from Tobago, and
Roland Batiste.
Roland Batiste was there from Trinidad.
Yeah.
And when I saw the team, the players we had playing in the amateur league, and then I saw the competition, I felt that we had a really good chance. But we had to really beef up the front line. And so when we went down to Trinidad, I got Alvin. And Alvin was a great fit. But the greatest piece of luck dropped into our lap. We had Keith Ackley. Yeah. Keith Ackley was about the fastest soccer player that I have ever seen or coached. And he came up there specifically to go to law school. And he didn't know we had a soccer team. And he heard we had practice, and he came out, and the first time he and Alvin played together, it was as though they played together for years, and that's how it started. So both of them really got the program off.
What was the success of the university in football before? What were they involved in football? What was it before that you actually took over?
Well, Howard has a rich history of soccer, and soccer started somewhere in the late 30s by a few people. They had some of the princes who came over from Africa and the Caribbean. They'd get together and they'd play a little soccer and so on. And then when we got into the 40s, Coach Chambers, who felt that the international students were not getting a rich part of the university life. And so he introduced football, soccer, and cricket. And it started from there. I think in 1961, they eventually won a small college NAI competition. And at that time, we had some of our top players would attend Howard just to get an engineering degree and different things like that. Nolly Hezekiah, Gibbs, and
Noel Carr.
Noel Carr, Dr. Noel Carr. All these were top soccer players. And they were there. But at that time, soccer was really nothing in the United States. But they played teams from time to time, and they won the championship back then. And they had a bit of success, but not at the level that we enjoyed in 1970, 71.
Okay. In 74, when you were on that winning team, tell me in your own words what the experience was. You know, you could relive some of the games, you know, and as you sit today and reflect, you know, how has that experience made a difference in your life?
Well, to talk about 1974, we have to talk about 1973. Okay. Yeah, and even 1972, which was my first year, and Alvin's last at Howard. In that year, 72, very quickly, we got to the semi-final against what I guess we could call our arch enemy, St. Louis University. And then the powers that be in the NCAA decided that there were legal issues surrounding some of our players. Keith Acquias won.
Players were not eligible to
That's
play,
right. Yeah. And Lincoln took a decision which I've never forgiven him for. And I cried like a child at the time it was taken. He took a decision that a couple of us, myself included, as a precautionary measure, shouldn't play in that semi-final. Although there was no real issue with me, he wanted, out of an abundance of caution, he said myself, a couple of the Jamaican boys. In 72, a good class, as they call it in the United States, came in. I was one. The captain of the Jamaica under 20 or 19 team, as it was then, also came in. And 3 or 4 other guys from Jamaica. So there was a good fresh crop coming in. And we all couldn't play. We lost that match. And then subsequently we were suspended. Howard was suspended by the NCAA, and we couldn't participate in the official tournament in 1973. But from that evening in the Orange Bowl in Miami in 72, I can speak for myself. I dedicated myself to getting back to that match and to winning that title back for Howard. So Lincoln made an excellent move. I'll speak for him here. He'll speak for himself in the spring, I believe it was, of 1974. He went to West Africa, and into Howard of 1974 in the summer came a batch of really top quality Nigerian players. One has to understand that at that point in time, a top player from Trinidad and Tobago, a national player from Nigeria didn't go to a professional league in Europe. There was every chance that he could come to Howard University or an NCAA school. And the captain of Nigeria came into Dominic Iziani. He came into Howard, and 4 other Nigerian players. I'm talking about top quality players. A Ghanaian international, Sami Akwa, he also came in. So that team was very strong. A good black British forward, Lincoln Petty, he came in from London, I believe. That was a strong team. And we went about our business. In that year, we went, and I believe it is still an NCAA record, 21 matches without defeat, without a draw. There were no draws, no ties in those days. So we won 21 games straight. And then we had the Jamaican boys who were all Jamaican internationals. Keith Tulloch, Mario McLennan, Richard Davey, and Bonnie Davey, brothers. I'm talking about a really good team. And so, you know, when in those days, when a team met Howard University, it was a matter of what the final score would be, but Howard was almost predestined to be the winner. It may sound boastful, but the record substantiates that, proves it, right? You didn't beat Howard. And that generated, I'll use my words, Lincoln is a more diplomatic guy, and Alvin too. This generated a serious racist backlash, in my view. And I remember in that year going to certain places where the crowd was very hostile. They would throw rubbish on us. They would call us, I'll say it, they would call us niggers, foreigners, go back home. That was the atmosphere in which we played and won. It wasn't the atmosphere today in which a black player could take for granted that I will play, and you get an isolated incident of racism or two. the entire atmosphere was racist. And we had to make our way through that. And I'm saying, therefore, that it is that kind of experience that has colored my entire perspective on the world today and has made me the man that I am, and that gives me my approach to life and to politics and to everything else.
Following up on Keith's point, we in 1970 had actually experienced a lot of what Keith had said, especially traveling into areas down south. I remember many times in the early days, we were actually refused sustenance, food, etc., when we stopped at certain diners, and we had to travel another probably 20 miles before we could eat when we were in places like North and South Carolina. But there was one experience where we had a clash with a team from Philadelphia, which was an experience up to this day will live in infamy of all the Howard players, where there was a clash not only among the players but of the spectators as well, and a lot of that was based on referees' decisions that were abominable, and it was referees' decisions that Lincoln had taught us. We are playing against 13 people, forget about it. We are playing against 12 because there were 2 referees sometimes in the system that they use. Forget about it. And we had become accustomed to that. But in Philadelphia Textile, it exploded. I would say up to this day, I was not the one that caused the riot. I was just the focus of why the riot started, and the riot started. And we actually had to have...
What caused the riot?
Well, one of the players actually clotheslined me on my way to goal. And in my effort to try and get away from him, a fist flew in his way but didn't connect.
Okay.
And that started a riot on the field. And what happened was, subsequent to that, we had to go back, because that was a playoff game, we had to go back to Philadelphia and play without spectators. The first time in my life.
That stopped the game?
No. The game
continued.
The game continued. And eventually, the first game.
Yeah.
The first game, yes, it stopped because of the riot.
Okay.
And the second game, we had to come up there and play without spectators. Never played a game in my life where no spectators were allowed. The closest spectators were with the police 400 yards away. And we played with 4 squad cars on the ground in Philadelphia. I'll never remember that. We beat Philadelphia Textile to take us into a Final Four. And then we lost in that Final Four in 1970.
And just to add to that, that was my first game in Howard colors. I was on the bench. So I got there, a week before the season started. A late call, as I said, from Lincoln. My very first game was to go up to Philadelphia to take part in a match against the very Philadelphia Textile, which also after 20 minutes broke out into a riot. I'm talking about fans on the field fighting, because we have guys from Ethiopia, Nigeria, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Bermuda, and they're swaggering around. Well, we have fellows from Germany and Scotland and England. We had them 5-0 in 20 minutes, and it went downhill very fast from there. And police intervention, etc., etc. So again, this was 1970. I'm talking 1974. So to marry the two, this was the context. Yeah. This was the environment in which we played our games. And if you go through that year after year, match after match, it changes you. It must change you.
Lincoln, as the coach, how did you handle these situations? Well, when I say handle, it's obvious it's going to be your responsibility to talk to these players, to let them understand, what is happening around them. Because is it easy in a situation like that to retaliate?
Yeah, it's very simple. And when I wrote my book, a gentleman gave me a review and he said, you were successful because I had IQ, CQ, and SQ. And I said, IQ I know about. And what is SQ and CQ? He said, social intelligence and cultural intelligence. And I'm wondering, what is he talking about? Where did that come from? And then I remembered certain things that happened with the team, that we had to bring players together. And we have to bring African players, Caribbean players from Trinidad and Jamaica and different places and so on. And that in itself was a handful. And you had to really understand how these fellas think and talk to bring these guys together. And I look back at my upbringing. I lived in St. James. And St. James, I live in Bengal Street. We have a lot of Indians, Chinese, you name it. So I believe I was able to get my cultural experience there. And then the social side of it. I think I wasn't too much older than the players. I was just a bit older, and I could understand the players. I understand how they felt. I could empathize with them, and that was so important with players coming from so far into a new culture facing these things. And I have always told the players, remember, this is what they're going to do to you on the field. They're going to call you nigger, they're going to call you all of these things, but you guys are very intelligent. You guys have a 4-point average. You major in engineering and so on. Just be calm. Get mad, okay, but get smart. And the way to get smart is to slam a ball to the back of the net. And as you're passing by, say, take this from the nigger. I have a 4-point average in engineering, and I can speak 4 languages.
But isn't that in a way now inciting? Because you score a goal on me now, and you telling me about your education. You're looking for me to hit you a clothesline.
No,
that's one of the reasons that you.
No, I was one of the quietest players on the field. Honestly, when I was on a football field, I focused on the job that had to be done. Yeah. My job was scoring goals, and that's what all I focused on.
But it was difficult, and I can't say that I handled that well by myself. I always brought in professors.
Okay.
And we had a professor by the name of Dom Basil Matthews. He used to be at St. Benedict's College. Yes. He came in at one time and spoke to the team. And he explained the team that after we lost the first championship, and he explained to the team that we are ambassadors, and we're here. We're not just soccer players. We are playing for our country. We're playing for the game. We're playing for Howard University, and he explained us that where Howard University stood within this whole triangle of blackness, And he said that Howard University is the chosen, is the custodian within this triangle of blackness. So we represent all of this. So we weren't just soccer players. We are ambassadors, and as he said, ambassadors must not be at their best often, but always.
All the time.
But so he, together with myself and other professors like himself, were able to reach the players and give them this sense of purpose. And I think we were able to get over the racism, and we realized that we just can't strive for excellence. We had to strive for perfection. And we tolerate excellence, but we had to strive for perfection. We always have to be at our very best, and as long as the players understood that, we were in good shape.
One of the things that I always felt throughout this whole Howard experience was that we in the Caribbean were totally different in our upbringing to an American black person. We never considered ourselves inferior in any way, academically, on a football field. We felt we were as good as anybody else in the classroom, and we were good as anybody else on a football field. And we never felt that we had to be subservient to anybody. And I think what happened sometimes is that we went into situations and into schools and into counties and into states where people felt that these were, and the word used at the time were uppity niggers, in that we didn't have that same subservience attitude that others would have. And as a result of that, our upbringing in the Caribbean, we were confident in what we were doing, and we exuded that confidence, and that confidence was part of the reason that we did so well at what we did. We did well at school. Keith and I both did well at St. Mary's College. We did well at Howard University as well. And I can't think of any of the boys who came from St. Mary's or from Trinidad who had a different experience.
Were the conditions any main point that made you all what you all turned out to be because of the situation that you all went into that helped to push you all to work extra harder and to achieve more?
Well, I mean, my grandfather was an immigrant from China. And I come from if I could put it that way, from an immigrant family. I understand the psychology of the immigrant. You go to a new country not to fail, but to succeed. And to improve on whatever you left behind. Now, when I left, I'll tell you squarely, when I left St. Mary's, what allowed me to get a university, college as they call it in the United States, education, is Lincoln Phillips. I'll always give him credit for that, and I've always given him credit for that, because I went to St. Mary's, and I'll say it for any kids listening out there, I went to St. Mary's. I did enough to repeat in Form 5, then I did enough to get into Form 6, and then I did enough to get a couple passes in A-levels, but education wasn't really a big concern for me. I wanted to play football.
Okay.
And when Lincoln gave me the opportunity, like as Alvin said several minutes ago, to go to school and play football, for me, it was an opportunity to play football and go to school. Okay. A little nuance in the perspective, because all I wanted to do was play football. And I went there, and frankly, I didn't take it very seriously in the first semester. I came in late, and I was almost a part-time student because the courses were full, and I had a lot of time on my hands. So again, you know, my priority was football, not school, until I realized one day in a class, Keith, this is easy. You could do this. I'm talking about the academic work. And then I started to apply myself. As Alvin said, I did very well in Howard as he did. So the academic side was not an issue. It never was. The football side, we could play. We were good players, and as the evidence shows, we were better than average in the context of the time. We won titles in the United States, so that was not an issue. The big learning curve was on the social side. Adapting to life on a university is the first time I had left my mother and father's house for any extended period of time. 1. 2, to go into an entirely different cultural context, and 3, one that included a very virulent racism still, because when you go to the South that is still fighting to come out of Jim Crow, which is you have to go to the back of the bus, you cannot eat in this restaurant, etc., etc., and that was the challenge. What helped me is 2 things. 1, my first 3 months in the United States, I lived in Lincoln Phillips' house with himself, his wife, and his young kids. I don't know, I think it was 2 at that time, that's right. Sheldon Phillips, former General Secretary of the TTFA, was one of them. He was quite a little boy. So living in a Trinidad family environment was immensely helpful. That's 1. And then secondly, when I left to go live with Alvin and Ian and a couple other Trinidadians in a 1-bedroom apartment. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy.
They used to call it a hungry house.
That's right. And I tell my players today and my kids, I remember waking up some mornings, eating cornflakes for breakfast. We got lunch in school, and then coming back home in the night, and if I'm hungry, eat some more cornflakes. But that is the experience that accounts for me being who I am and where I am today. So it was not an easy transition out of the security of a Trinidad domestic environment. I never lived in the dorm. I have no experience of living in the dorm. Alvin did. So his experience will be a little different to mine. But it was a big jump for me. And emotionally, in the beginning, it was difficult. But then, we adapt and you come to terms with your new environment and you proceed. And Lincoln and Alvin were big in that for me.
Alvin?
Well, as I said, I had a slightly different experience because when I first came up, that dorm room was arranged for me, and I roomed with Trevor Mitchell, who had never met in Trinidad before, and he was eventually later to become the manager of the football team. He only played my first year, and then he became the manager. And Trevor and I were in the dorm. And in the dorm, to tell you the honest truth, we were quite comfortable. I was 30 yards away from the football field and not too far from the cafeteria as well. So as long as that was arranged...
You had more than conflict.
I had more than conflict. So it's only when in the second and third year, when they expect you now to go out of the dorm into the community, then Ian Bain and I, Ian, who I had told Lincoln about, he was in Spain and England at the time, and I told him, Lincoln, you have to recruit Ian Bain, who was the person who was the feeder of many of the goals that I scored at St. Mary's. I wanted that process to continue at Howard. And Lincoln went after Ian Bain. He and I were good friends since we were 12 years old. And then Ian, who lived in the dorm with me for 1 year, we both decided then to go out into the community off-season and find somewhere to live in an apartment. And that experience of living in Washington, D.C. and experiencing not only the football at Howard, but the cultural things that went on in Washington at the time was a great one for me.
Lincoln, you were given from what I'm gathering here, you were given all clearance to recruit any player that you sorted.
Well, it was not that easy. It was not that easy. Everything was a fight. You know, football, American football, and basketball, they were king and queen. And at that time, when I came in, Howard University was now given a little more focus on sports. We were strictly an academic university, and they decided to place some emphasis, give some scholarships and so on. And we were able to get a scholarship, one. I think each school is entitled to 14. We got one, and I invested that one in Alvin. And we came from nowhere, and we qualified in 1970. And we should have gone a little further, and we could have won. And I remember I fault myself for that. You know, I didn't make a change with a goalkeeper we had there, and I don't know, I was scared. I was first year and so on, and we did very well. And after that, we were able to get a couple more scholarships. When we came back from that in 1970, the airport, there was thousands of people were there, and they gave us an escort, a police escort from the airport to Howard University. And I can remember vividly Ricky Alariata sat down on the bus, and like a silence came over the bus, and he said, you know something, you know, we better than these people. We could win this championship. And right then and there, the players just dedicated themselves, you know, to coming back and winning this championship. And in 1972, I thought we had the best team ever. And contrary to what Keith said, I didn't make that decision. I was mad to keep the players off the team. The athletic director, which I hate him up to this day, he made that decision to keep Keith and I think it was Moridiani, yes, the crux of our team, keep them off there. Nothing was wrong. And that was a bad decision. I had, as a coach, I had to go along with it. And
well, Keith, after all these years, you finally heard the truth.
We finally are here.
Viewers, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we want to chat a bit about some of the games that brings a smile to your face now when you sit down now and you remember these games. So viewers, we'll be right back after the short break.
I have a dream.
Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight.
43 dead and a city in flames.
I'm declaring a public state of emergency.
No black college had won a Division I NCAA championship.
That's the end of the game. Howard University has won. Howard is the NCAA champion.
The National Collegiate Athletic Association announced in Chicago that the Howard University Bisons have been stripped of its 1971 title.
This here was bias, it was prejudice, we were discriminated against.
Politics don't affect St. Louis University. I'm sorry that politics do affect other teams.
I wasn't even thinking of discrimination. I was thinking about, we'll get it back.
It's not about soccer anymore.
Every time we took the field, we had to represent people in a country that needed a voice.
We grew because of the struggle.
Truth crushed to earth will rise again.
Truth crushed to earth shall rise again.
Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back to Scoreboard here on Axe Television Network. Keith, in a nutshell, there has to be one game that you played that has to stand out as a lasting memory. What is that game?
Well, I'll give you two. The first one quickly.
Yeah.
My first match was in the Dust Bowl, as we call the Howard Stadium for the lack of grass. But we always had a big crowd. But that was my introduction to actually being on the pitch and racism on the field, or as I interpreted it anyway. And the referee was making some abominable decisions, to quote Alvin, and I picked up some mud and threw it at him, but he didn't see. And that was my very first match. But the match which will always stand out was the final in 1974. I mean, the script was written in Hollywood, because, as I said many minutes ago, St. Louis University was the representation of what we thought was the enemy in U.S. soccer. It embodied, the racist attitude towards Howard University and everything we stood for. And we lost to them in the semi-final, the match I couldn't play in. And we got back to the final against them in St. Louis University's home field in Busch Stadium, big stadium, in 1974. Remember it well, snow had fallen all day and they just pushed it to the side of the pitch. It was bitter cold. And we beat them in, at that time they had 2 extra time periods, sudden death, or as FIFA came to call it later on, golden goal, and then they put it out of the door again. But we beat them in the second period with a goal from one of our African players. And at that moment, as I said, it was bitter cold, but I remember well, ripping off my jersey and running up into our crowd of supporters, because they had traveled, driven. Many people had come to support us in that match because they understood the importance of the game too, the significance of the game. And I ran up into the crowd. And then Billy Jones, who was an assistant coach from Sierra Leone, he followed me up and he took off his coat and he put it on me because I was bareback in bitter cold. And that memory, because that was the release, the emotional release from the burden I had been carrying since 1972. And that made it all worthwhile. I'll never forget that night.
Okay, Alvin.
Well, since Keith quoted 2, I'll quote 2 as well. One was a cold experience where for the first time we were playing in weather that was, at the time, it was probably close to 5 degrees. We were going up to the Navy and the Naval Academy. And in fact, it caused one of the Navy coaches to make the comment that he hopes those West Indians freeze their you-know-whats off. And that quote made the newspaper. And he felt that we will not be able to function. We will not be able to function as a team in that cold weather. We started playing, and then we got the surprise of our life. A busload of Howard students arrived on the naval campus, cheerleaders, et al. And band. And they started their band, a big band in the stands. That gave us life. That gave us a stimulus.
Courage
of
courage.
Unbelievable courage that we went at the Navy and the U.S. Navy, an all-white naval team that wanted us to freeze in the cold. We went at them, and we were able to beat them 2-0 that propelled us into a Final Four again. That match, in my opinion, was one of the turning points of that year. But the match, just like Keith has said, the match that would significantly stay in my mind was the final that we played in a totally different atmosphere. We were down in Miami, in the warm climate of Miami. And again, students had followed us. This time, they had chartered a plane, and they came down to Miami. We were down in Miami. Student following came down and chartered a plane down to Miami. And we were playing in the Miami Orange Bowl against our old rival, St. Louis. The problem was that Keith Acquey, my partner on the field, one of my main goal thrusters on the team, he was ill at the time. And he came off a sick bed. And we were able to come from behind in that game. And I was able to score the winning goal, a goal I'll never forget in my life. I don't think I'll ever score one like that in my life again, because it was hit from about 30 yards out into the southern goal of the southern goal of the Orange Bowl to win the game 3-2 against a St. Louis team. I'll never forget it.
Lincoln, out of all what we have spoken about here and the experience at Howard, ESPN has now decided to do something about this whole experience. You want to share that with us?
Well, yes. 40 years later, they decided to induct the 74 team into the Hall of Fame. And one of the things I mentioned, I said, if you're going to induct the Hall of Fame, 74 team, we have to induct the 71 team, because that was the catalyst. And they did. They inducted the two teams, and it came across very, very well. It was well attended, a lot of great memories and so on. And the ESPN saw it. One of the young man by the name of Mark Wright, who was a student of Ian Bain, one of the captain of the team, and they decided to do a story on this. It is, I think, Spike Lee has a series of short stories, and he picked it up. And this is going to be, the name is going to be The Redemption Song. And this is the untold story of Howard University. It is history, black history and history, because we're the only university, period, across the board that has ever won an NCAA championship untied and unbeaten. And the important thing about this is that the Howard University played so well that it opened the doors for students of third world countries, of Caribbean countries, of Africa, and even America, for Europe to open their doors to professional football. Because the better players on the college level, played in the MLS at the time, or NASL, and did exceedingly well. Alvin ended up playing for the same team I played for. I was a goalkeeper and he was a center forward. And I remember one game in particular, we were playing against Santos of Brazil, and they didn't start him for whatever reason, I don't know. But he came on in the second half and scored 4 goals in that game. Three goals. Yeah. It was just outstanding. So our players carried on their playing prowess from college to professional, and this is where Europe started opening their doors. So we did we opened up a lot of doors, and so this story is going to be aired on sometime in April. And I think we have on ESPN. We have a trailer.
We'll be showing the trailer. Yeah.
And that trailer, gives briefly, what transpired during that period, what we refer to as the golden era of soccer at Howard University.
Okay. Also, you want to touch a bit about what's been happening with your book. Your book.
Yeah, the book is going very well, and it's a story of my life, and a major part of that story is Howard University. The 10 years I spent in Howard University, and the same guy, Mark Wright, when he read that story from the book, you know, he was enthused, and that really urged him to go outside there and get more information about the Howard story. So the book is doing very, very well, and it's selling very nicely in the United States. As a matter of fact, I'm doing quite a few speaking engagements around the book, you know, and talking about these young men, how they were great soccer players, but they were also great students. And this is the message that we want to get across to our young people in Trinidad today.
That's great football, but
that's
all
right.
wrong. Yeah.
All wrong. Soccer, academics and athletics, they are compatible. It should not be one or the other. You can do both of them. And these gentlemen here are great living examples, and we in Trinidad should utilize them a lot more. We have not utilized these great examples, you know, to help our young people move forward.
I know you want to put in a plug because you are now the agent for the for Lotto.
Yes, yeah.
Not Lotto where you win money, but the football company that is bringing out a new line of goalkeeping attire. You want to share that with us?
Yeah, well, I'm now the goalkeeping consultant for Lotto. This is an Italian company, and whatever, they're making a big surge, just like Puma. Puma is now back up and running, and they're now putting some money into it. And I'm now the goalkeeping consultant for Lotto, and my job is to really bring goalkeeping to the next level. And I have to do a lot of clinics and speaking engagements on their behalf. And one of the things I am doing right now is introducing protective equipment. I'm talking with a couple of companies. We have, you know, in these tough grounds, when you slide, make a 1v1 save, you come up with a lot of the side of your skin on the field. Yeah. And this is is sliding pants. Sliding pants is not new, but the technology, the protection is such that it's lightweight, and the shorts is breathable, okay, and washable, and you feel like as though you have nothing. It's not bulky, you know. So it's the newest innovation on underwear protection. We also have the jersey. Okay, at the front you have the protective equipment here, so in case you get a hard knock there. If you land on your side, okay, there's some protection here and protection on the shoulders, and of course the shin guards. Shin guards the technology is the latest in the world. It is very, very protective, better than any of the top shin guards in the world. So I'm very fortunate to be involved with Lotto and to get involved in taking goalkeeping to the next level.
Well, I think we are coming close to the end of the program, and I would like to give each of you all a few minutes to, you know, reflect on, you know, any parting words you'd like to share with us. Keith?
Well, yeah, you started with me. I guess I will go first. First of all, I've said it many times in private over the years, but to your audience and to the world and on television, I need to say again, I've said it before here, that, you know, where I am today and who and what I am today in significant measure is due to the opportunity and the leadership that Lincoln gave to me. And I've told him that before in private, and I'll say it now on television. That's the first point. The second point is that as a result of that opportunity, I got an education and 2 degrees that I really don't use and haven't used for the last, I don't know, 20 or 25 years, because I followed my star. My star and my first love was always football, and I followed that, and I've been making my living in one way or another from football for the last almost 25 years. But the degree or degrees and the process of getting the degrees are what is important, right? Because it equipped me to face life and to understand how to deal with the issues of life, the complications and the challenges. So I want to reiterate the point that Lincoln made before, you know, play your sport. And let me look at the camera. Play your sport, or have your children play the sport, but they need to get that education, even if they have a professional future ahead of them. And then the last one is perhaps a political point. Again, I didn't go to any university. I went to a black university in America at the beginning of the 1970s. And if you understand the entire political, social, cultural context of that statement, you understand that that would not have been easy to be a representative of such an institution, right? And that gave me an understanding of what it is to be a black man in today's world. And while a lot may have changed, a lot has not, because we still last year saw Ferguson and everything that is happening today, where literally there is still an open season on black males by a system that basically oppresses them. That's my political view. And that was developed in me as a result of the 10 years I spent in America, including the introduction given to me by Lincoln and Howard University. So that, you know, I want to say again, thanks to him and to the young people, anybody out there listening, you know, live your life, get your education, build your experience, and put experience to the service of those who do not have it and those who are coming from, you know, coming behind you.
Very good advice. Alvin?
Well, on a takeoff from that, I've had a similar experience where education has been a major part of my life, as football has. Sport has in general, but football has. And I can't see me doing one without the other. I was lucky enough, after doing well at Howard, to move on to Howard to have a medical degree. And people ask me, Alvin, why did you come back home? Why did you come back home after you were a doctor in the US of A? You could have made a lot of money. The reason I came back home and spent 30 enjoyable years serving my country and serving my people in a public healthcare system. And that's what I did. And that's what Howard instilled in me. That was also instilled in me from St. Mary's as well. And I'm saying that I'm happy that I was able to marry both education as well as sport, that going on from my father, who was an international referee as well as a specialist dentist. And so I got a lot from him. It carried on through St. Mary's and into Howard University. Lincoln was not only my hero, my mentor, my coach, but as I told him, and I keep on telling him, even today, when he couldn't find his way to this spot, Lincoln, stick with me, and I will take you places.
Lincoln, you have 1 minute to wrap up. 1 minute.
Well, I just have to say that as a coach, I've been very successful, especially at Howard University. And if successful coaches believe that they can do it on their own, well, they're sadly mistaken. If you take a 10-foot pole and you put a turtle on top of it, you have to understand that the turtle did not get there by itself. So the success of these guys who came and did on the field and off the field was a major contributor to my success. And we hope that our young people looking on, and also the professional folks in football, will make sure, and in schools, that make sure that our young soccer players get that education. Do not let it surpass them.
Gentlemen, it was a pleasure. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I know it's a pleasure that once you come to Trinidad, you always
yes, indeed.
Well, viewers, we hope that you did enjoy this segment of Scoreboard here at Television Network. And as I said before, we had 3 distinguished gentlemen. And when I say distinguished, it means that they were professionals on and off the field, and they did us proud as Trinidadians, and we want to thank them for their services, what they have given back to the country, and we want to wish them all great success. Remember, tonight's football match is a Pro League game between Point Fountain Civic Center against St. Anne's Rangers. We hope you enjoy that. Keep viewing Access Television Network. Next week, Tuesday, same time, Scoreboard right here on this channel.
have a dream.
Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight.
43 dead and a city in flames.
I'm declaring a public state of emergency.
Understand, no black college had won a Division I NCAA championship.
That's the end of the game. Howard University has won. Howard is the NCAA champion.
The National Collegiate Athletic Association announced in Chicago that the Howard University Bisons have been stripped of its 1971 title.
This here was bias, it was prejudice, we were discriminated against.
Politics don't affect St. Louis University. I'm sorry that politics do affect other teams.
I wasn't even thinking of discrimination. I was thinking about, we'll get it back.
It's not about soccer anymore.
Every time we took the field, we had to represent people in a country that needed a voice.
We grew because of the struggle.
Truth crushed to earth will rise again.
Truth crushed to earth shall rise again.